Hi, I'm Peter Llewellyn of NetworkPharma TV. This is one of my unscripted conversations, as I like to call them, where I get people along who I think have something interesting to share with us all. So what are we going to learn today? Dominic Marchant, thank you very much for joining me. And I'm talking to you in your role today, let's be specific, your role today as the chair of the UK's PM Society. I wanted to use the upcoming launch of the new PMI Awards. September 2025 is the first of the PMI Awards. I wanted to use that as an excuse to have a chat with you about the role of awards, the PM Society, but generally the role of the awards in the industry. Okay, but starting at first base, can I ask you, Dom, just to give us a few words of introduction in your own words? You know who you are, where you are, and how you got there.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, I'm Dom Marchant, and I'm here today talking as my role as chair of the PM Society, the Pharmaceutical Marketing Society, to give it its elongated title, but everyone shorthands it to the PM Society. I've had 3 decades of experience of running agencies, building them, and then selling them. So I've sold 3 agencies in that time, 2 of those in healthcare, bringing me straight up to date. Where am I now? I'm still investing in various initiatives, and one of which being my own, which is a sports brand run right. But I still have a very much an active interest in the pharmaceutical marketing and communications arena, hence me being the chair of the PM Society.
Excellent. Okay, thanks. So let's start by just telling us a little bit about the PM Society. That seems an obvious place to start.
Yeah, so the PM Society is a not-for-profit. It's been around 50 years. Well, it will be in 2026. And it has a number of initiatives, probably best known actually for its 2 awards, the PM Society Digital Awards, as was, which is now the PMIs, we'll come on to that, and the PM Awards, which is the big one at Grosvenor House around about March time every year, which fundamentally looks at the best in advertising and communications in UK and actually further abroad than just UK now, healthcare communications. But it also has a number of interest groups, 7, I believe, interest groups ranging from the digital interest group through to patient support, through to everything, sustainability, etc., etc. And there's a huge amount of good work done by volunteers. It's a very key point. It being a not-for-profit, we ask for a lot of volunteer help. But any money that is made predominantly from those 2 awards goes into funding those interest groups and also other initiatives. So quite a lot of money is given to charity work that supports and helps those charities that need it most within healthcare. So that's the criteria, if you like. And just to put a number on that, it's about £150,000 has been given to those charities over the last 5 years. So it's a huge amount of work being done under the banner of advancing standards. That's the tagline. What does that mean? It means that everything we do has to be measured against that. It's really as simple as that. No more sophisticated, I'm afraid, than that mantra of advancing standards.
Okay, I mean, can I say this? I wasn't around at the start of the PM Society, but I certainly go back quite a long way. And I remember in its early days, it was very different. And I will say bluntly, I mean, I remember when I was in pharmaceutical marketing originally, asking about joining the PM Society, and it was dismissed as a bit of a golf society sort of thing. And you have come a long way since then. I think that's fair to say. But again, just give me a sense of that journey that's been taken. I mean, it must have been quite interesting. Never been involved in the PM side, but you have. So to be part of that evolution, can you just give us a bit of a sense of how that's evolved in what ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good observation, and I had a very similar viewpoint. It was golf and sailing was a lot of the
Mm.
socials around the PM Society of old. And I think, that the industry, well, society generally has evolved, hasn't it, over the last 50 years? But the industry in itself has become much more, I would say, more democratic, maybe, more egalitarian, definitely a greater push towards equality, diversity, etc. In everything that the industry does, and the society is a reflection of that, simply put. So I think the old sort of antiquated image, and one I hear quite often as well, particularly when it comes to awards, is it's a bunch of people in a room, a hotel room, with smoking cigars and drinking whiskey, debating what is good and what is not. Those those were sort of old visions, if you like, of what the society maybe once represented have definitely gone. And I think that what you see in its place is something that's far more dynamic. There's a lot more diversity in age as well. And I think that's really important. We've got a lot more people coming through. I don't want to say younger, but maybe earlier on in their careers into the society, as well as people such as myself who may be at the end of their careers in the industry.
Okay, and specifically with the awards, I mean, what's the right way of asking this question, I suppose? We all like awards. It's a fun evening. I get all of that.
Mm.
Um, but there's a serious side to it. There's a business side to it, yeah, on both sides, right? So the
Yeah.
PM Society, I think it's important that there are societies like the PM Society. I suspect it's important that there are awards, but it is a bit of a a self-fulfilling thing, isn't it? We need awards to bring in cash. We need to make the awards, mean something. Uh, I'm coming at it a little bit skeptically. So if
Yeah.
I'm the skeptic sitting the other side of the fence, uh, what are your arguments? What is the importance of those awards really, other than just having a good time and funding a number of other activities, sort of thing?
Yeah, and I share your cynicism towards awards. There are so many awards in our
Mm,
industry. I came from many moons ago, sort of consumer retail entertainment industries where there are awards, but my God, they're not as concentrated as they are in healthcare. We seem to have awards every month, and of course you've got the really big awards, and big I mean those that get the limelight, shall we say, and are the ones that are most revered, particularly in the creative circles, like Cannes Lions, for example.
right.
You've got D&AD, which isn't just peculiar to healthcare, but obviously has have a healthcare track to it. You've got your Clios, you've got so many, and in this country, in the UK, I suppose the two big ones are Communique, which is predominantly much more Medcom's PRE. And then you've got the PM Awards, which has been associated in the past more as advertising. And I like to think we've kind of moved the needle a bit on that. It represents more than just the creative, the advertising companies, agencies, and it's more widespread and more inclusive church, if you like. But you have to say we all dance the dance, particularly as somebody who's run an agency, and you know what you need to do to get on the radar of procurement, right? You need to do good work. How do you get good work noticed? You win awards, right? It really is that simple. Well, it's not that simple, obviously, but that's a key part of getting yourself on the radar. So you then have to say, well, okay, well, which awards are important, So if you're looking at big global accounts, you want to take over the whole portfolio of work for a big pharmaceutical company, then Cannes Lions is going to probably do you well. I'd say that star is starting to not shine so brightly at the moment. There's a lot of cynicism, particularly with scams over the last couple of years being called out, not necessarily just in healthcare. But then you start looking at those awards competitions that really matter. And I'll give you a quote from a Mike Brightly at Langland, who said that the PM Awards are rewarding or celebrating real work that really works. And I really like that expression because it is absolutely at the core of what we're trying to do with both the awards competitions is to celebrate real work that really works, not just some wonderfully great creative idea that may have seen the light of day and may actually be talking something outside of what we might call pure pharmaceutical marketing. It might be more about corporate social responsibility, for example. It might be something that's very emotive, might be more about awareness and less about promotion, for example. That's not to say we don't look at disease awareness, but it is fundamentally about real work that really works.
And that begs the question about the process. So again, our memories go back a long way. The process of judging the awards, I've not been involved, but has changed dramatically, and I think all for the good. But can you tell us something about that? Because I think that the cynics will say, yeah, it's just a club of people, giving their mates an award or something, or yours is a very thorough process as I see it from the outside. Give us a bit of a sense. And in the end, what's the question is, okay, but even so, what is good and how do you determine good? But the process, I think, is worth spending a moment on because it's not just a lottery, is it? There is a real process there.
Yeah, and the process is broadly defined as this. I mean, it does differ between the two awards competitions. So, for example, just to highlight one of those main differences, with the PMIs, formerly the digital awards, there is actually a live presentation. And by live, I mean over the last couple of years, sort of post-COVID, it has actually been done on something like this, Zoom, but previously it was done in a hotel. And it's an opportunity for you to present your work. And that's when you get down to the final shortlist. Yeah. But the first round is done where work is submitted and you get to view it via a set criteria, pro forma, if you like. So it's not a vehicle by which you can have a really cool video that explains what the work was about and be blinded by that, if you will. There is an element of supplementary information that you can submit into that pro forma piece, but otherwise it's quite regimented. So we're comparing as best we can apples with apples. Yeah. In terms of the judging, the process is you can only judge for a maximum of 2 years consecutively. So we do rotate to, again, avoid bias. We also have a large number of judges, and that's fundamentally different to, say, other competitions. So within any particular category, you may well have 8 to 10 judges, and they may judge 2 or 3 other categories, but we generally avoid them being across any more than that. So again, you've got this large bolus of judges, if you like, with lots of different opinions, lots of different backgrounds as well. So again, one of the old sort of myths, if you like, particularly with any creative awards, thinking particularly here the PM awards, is that it's mostly creative directors, mostly people that are focusing very much on the craft and the concept. Whereas with ours, we have quite a large spread of industry as well as the agency folk. And again, with the agency folk, we're not just looking at ECDs, CDs, etc. We are looking at people with a diverse range of skills. So, for example, strategists, agency owners, etc., who might be looking at this more than just through the lens of, is it really creative, in air quotes. So yeah, there is some serious rigor to that. I mean, I'm going to plug something here, apologies, but there was a PM Talks that Carmen and I did, which was a myth buster that basically just said, look, this is what it is and what it isn't. The one thing I really want to make clear is that I saw some chat a couple of years ago after one of the awards, and it was basically saying, and I'm grossly paraphrasing, but along these lines of, effectively, if you sponsor the awards, or if you buy a number of tables, you're going to win an award. That is categorically not the case. Absolutely zero influence on whether you win or whether you don't.
But you can see why people ask the question, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
From a process point of view, and just to be clear on this, because I've not quite thought it through in the past, so you have a good number of judges, and then there's a process and a rigor, but in the end, is it a simple vote and a majority passes, as it were?
So very simply put, yes, to get through the first round and be shortlisted, it is numerical. It's like, did it get the most number of, ticks in each criteria that we're selecting? I mentioned that pro forma piece, was it effective? Depending obviously on the category, the weighting, changes. Does it get to be shortlisted? Yes, it's a numbers game. Then where it gets more interesting, I'd argue, is that when you get, 8 people in a room, whether it be a virtual room or in real life, and they're debating the merits of A versus B. And then you are getting into, some really interesting discussions about what good looks like. And that's where that's where it gets interesting, particularly when you look at the PM Awards, where it is very much a craft or creative competition. There are obviously many categories that have outcomes, KPIs, etc., as a criteria for judging. But more than the PMIs, it's about the brilliance of this thinking and the creative. The PMIs, on the other hand, which the I stands for impact innovation, is very much about, did it work? Show me the proof points that this great creative campaign, advert, whatever, actually had success. And that's what we're looking for there. So it's a bit more, what shall I say, binary in that sense. But then again, even defining what success looks like can be moot point, for example, depending on what the category is.
So you still end up with a bunch of people in a room. Numerically, the majority takes the decision as well, because how else can it work, sort of thing. But one of the questions I was intrigued by, and I might get this a little bit wrong, but it might just make the point. but I might be thinking back to the early days again. Particularly, I'm thinking with the PM Awards, or what are now called the PM Awards. Um, there were stories of ads that would be, award winning, but actually they'd been pulled after 6 weeks because they were non-compliant with the ABPI. Or there was also a move, certainly at one point, I don't know what you do about it now, there was certainly a move at one point to get the audience, i.e. the healthcare professionals, to judge the award and so on. So it wasn't just the industry people in their club room, as it were, deciding themselves. Again, there's a couple of points in there, but can you address a couple of those points there? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll go back to the last point you made there. The GP Craft Award, typically, or the GP Target Award, there have been so many names for that, where you would get the healthcare professionals, particularly in primary care, as that name might suggest, to vote on what ad they thought was the best. Now, I'll be blunt. If you look at those ads, it'll be the ones they've probably seen the most.
Yeah,
And they're not the most sophisticated, and they're not generally the most, again, air quotes, creative, but they are the ones that GP go, oh yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen that in BMJ, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I'm familiar with that one, and that suddenly becomes a bit of an echo chamber. Then it's just like, have you seen it? Oh, I've seen it loads of times. Yeah, I recognize it. And oh God, yeah, I prescribed that loads and loads of times. Again, there's all these kind of biases that will
yeah,
influence you. So that's not necessarily something I think that stands the test of time. And one of the key things about the PM Society, the awards being a great representation of that, is you have to evolve. Yeah, I mean, you have to evolve, what you do, what categories are, what you're called. I mean, the PM Society Digital Awards, digital in 2025, that doesn't sound right. Digital is an adjective, not a noun. We've been saying that for years. So it needs to evolve. And again, digital awards have always focused on impact and innovation. We've just changed the name to reflect what it has become. So that point you mentioned about the GP one, for example, GPs judging a category, I'm not necessarily sure that's necessarily valid. Sorry, your first point though was, I've forgotten.
so just to be clear on that point, because I'm not up to date on this, but the GP awards aren't judged by GPs now.
There isn't a GP award.
Or there isn't a GP award anyway, but so there isn't that aspect, because I know there was at one stage, but there isn't now.
Yeah.
My first point was, and as I said, I'm not quite sure of the exact examples, but I know there were ads in the past, certainly a long time ago, that would get an award, and then there'd be a bit of fuss about the fact, well,
Oh, yeah.
that was pulled because it was ABPI non-compliant or something.
Yeah.
Again, I just wonder what sort of guardrail. Are there guardrails? Do there need to be guardrails? Does it matter? Because are you judging something different to whether it's compliant or not? I don't know. There's an interestingly complex discussion in there, I suspect, depending on which side of the table you're sitting on.
Yeah, so I'll answer that very directly. It has to have been live during a certain period of time prior to the awards, right? So it has to, and we have to see that. You've got to see a date of prep. You've got to have seen that it's been used in the media. That has to have been, if it were a print piece. Let me be clear. If it's something that isn't necessarily a print piece, and God Almighty, in 2025, we're talking about things that are predominantly digital.
Yeah, yeah,
It has to have some proof point that it has been live during a period of time that is set by the judging committee, and there is a committee for the judging that is within a period of time over the course of the previous year, for example. So that's quite rigorous. And by the way, some things don't fail to make it to shortlist because there isn't that proof point. Someone
right.
calls it and goes, well, I've seen a DOP that's like last week, on something that's been submitted. So, seriously, has this been live? Yeah, actually, well, the concept was around, but, we were waiting for approval. So, okay, boosh, that goes. And back to my point, or rather Mike Brightley's quote about real work that really works. It has to be, again, it can't be like some of the other awards competitions where you do see stuff that, is a great idea, is a brilliant example of the creative flex of the agency, or maybe even the company's thinking, but never actually really saw the light of day. But I will say this, there's a really nice distinction, I think, or a great definition of why these two things are important. Two types of awards competitions are important. So you've got the PM awards and you've got the PMI awards, which is real work that really works. Yeah. So this is fundamentally about recognizing and celebrating real work that really works, and tangible work, proof points needed. And then you've got other things, can lines perhaps. And again, I think there was a great definition of what the importance of can lines was. It was compared to the fashion industry. It's like a catwalk. Yeah, you don't necessarily see those items of clothing in the high street. Yeah, but they're pushing it. They're pushing it to the point at which you go, wow, there's something interesting there. And it's highly creative expression. But is it necessarily real? Is it
Yeah.
tangible? Is it something that you're going to see in, go back to the GP ads? Is it something you're going to see in front of a healthcare professional? Well, maybe not, but we need to push for great sometimes as well. So I'm not going to bash any awards. They all have their place. We've just defined our corner, if you like, as being about that work that really does work.
Okay. Okay. Again, going off in a slightly different direction and maybe being slightly provocative, but we all lived through the COVID type lockdown, and these awards were carrying on through that, and you had online demonstrations and presentations and so on. I mean, I suppose again, the cynic, if I'm allowed to play that role, says, well, okay, I get the rigor, I get the value of awards. But do you all need to go to the big London hotel and have a big dinner with champagne and all the rest of it? Or can you just have that process, deliver the awards, and everyone goes, thank you very much, and moves on? I'm being slightly provocative here, but the
Yeah.
big bash is a big part of this. Um, Comment, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting observation, and we've asked people, before, like, do you want to still do it at the Grosvenor House? Grosvenor House is a very traditional,
Hmm.
dare I say it, old school venue for a big do, and people have said to us, no, actually, this is where it needs to be. This is, as soon as you start to talk about change, people lean into the heritage. The equity of the PM Awards is in its heritage. It will be its 40th year in 2026. In March 2026, we will be celebrating 40 years of these awards. So we ran actually last year two, I wouldn't call them steering groups, but meetings with lots of people from industry agency to ask them what they thought of the awards. And this is when we were fundamentally looking at the PM Society Digital Awards and trying to pivot, make that more relevant, shall we say. But we have said, look, we've got two awards, should we just have one? For example, should we just have one? Obviously, we lose a revenue stream if we do that. But, we're quite happy under the banner of advancing standards to say, maybe we need to do that. Again, to stress, we're not for profit. This doesn't go into anybody's pockets, this money. And the argument was, well, no, actually, because the PM Society Digital, as was, represents work that's a bit different, and different agencies will enter that, and different companies will enter that, and different types of workers represented at those awards. So actually, no. You want to keep that different. And actually, also the PMI Awards, as it's now called, is representing maybe the more innovative stuff, hence innovation and impact being in there. So you're going to get, again, maybe a different type of agency, different type of work there. Whereas the PM Awards is more the traditional creative work that in itself has evolved a huge amount anyway. So look at those two events just as a representation of what you're celebrating. The Grosvenor House, everybody goes there. Interesting you talk about COVID. Post-COVID, oh my God, everyone wanted to come. Sick and tired of doing everything on Zoom, wanted a big celebration. And it was huge, the response to that. I mean, literally numbers were through the roof. And it starts in the middle of the day and it goes on into the evening, late into the evening. It's a big celebration. People have fun. But that's what they were asking for. Whereas the PMIs is at the brewery, different part of London, East London, a bit cool, a bit edgier, dare I say it. And it's celebrating something called innovation and impact. So they are fundamentally different awards competitions with maybe, if you did a Venn diagram, a little bit of overlap in the middle. But again, if you look at what wins, there's generally not a lot that wins in both.
To pin you down, my question I'm trying to get at a little bit and being slightly provocative about it is, do you need the big bash?
Yes, you do.
Because it's very expensive. Let's be honest about it. So
No, it's
yeah.
not. You throw that out there. It is the cheapest awards competition to enter of its nature. It is.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of to enter, in terms of a table, it is one of the cheapest. Yeah. To sponsor, again, it's not one of the most expensive. We keep everything down because fundamentally different to other awards competitions, we are a not-for-profit. So we're not having to, appease a shareholder or a privately owned company. This is about how can we make money to fund the other things, but we're not there to make a huge amount of profit.
And I entirely understand that point. You made it very well. Maybe my words were a bit clumsy, but entering any award, going to any meeting for a lot of people
Mm.
is an expense, yeah,
Yes.
which means there's got to be some thought going into it, and it will by definition put a whole bunch of people off,
Yes.
who would otherwise love to be there. Just by definition, I could put you could have a £50 entry fee on it, and that's expensive for some people. So my words were maybe clumsy, and but that's the only point I'm making. There is a cost, and it is a not insignificant cost for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
also, I did. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know the PMI awards say this, and I assume the PM awards say the same thing. You have to be a member, a corporate member of the PM Society in order to enter. So there's an element of you're self-selecting the bigger agencies and the people with some money and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean that's the only point I'm making there. Whereas and in the end, there's a big bash with people who can afford to go to that. Um, and I'm just wondering whether there's any sort of conflict as you see it, and I'm guessing there's probably not. But in terms of that sort of selection of a group of people that can join in
Yeah.
versus the idea of we're all about inclusivity and anybody can join in with these things. And I know this is always a spectrum of activity and so on and so forth. Everyone's anything that's free is paid for by somebody, and all those sorts of arguments.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, being the skeptic in the discussion, how much are you making it just by definition of the model an exclusive club?
Okay, I want to address the first one about exclusivity. So to enter, you need to be a member of the PM Society. It's a very small cost, even if you factor that in versus other awards competitions, the cost to entry, the barrier, let's call it that, to entry is very, very low. And to become a member of the PM Society, yes, again, that money that you enter the awards with is going to go to not-for-profit activities like the interest groups, like charity. So's the entry fee. Yeah. So that basically means that you're going to be helping advance standards with that minimal cost. Everything is relative, right? So when, again, you talk about, is it an exclusive because of cost? Well, I've just said the cost to become a member is very, very small, very small. Even if you factor that in with the cost to enter something, it's still going to be less than, and again, let's compare apples with apples here, than Cannes. You look at the cost of entry for Cannes,
Sure.
it is huge. You want to talk about expensive exclusivity. If you're a small agency, and I've run a couple in my time that, yeah, okay, they got bigger. Yeah, but when you're sort of 10, 15 people, the idea of entering into Cannes is a huge expense. The idea of then going to attend with maybe inviting a client and, two or three of your team, it suddenly becomes prohibitively expensive. Whereas to go to an all-day event, and it's a big event, what you get for your money is a big event, that goes from 12 until 8. It's just not comparable. The costs are not comparable. And again, you can compare that with other competitions in the UK in healthcare. We are still fundamentally less expensive than anything else. So that's the first point. The second point, we do recognize, though, that again, to your earlier remark about 50 quid is still expensive for some, there will be some agencies, particularly at the moment, and let's be honest, the last couple of years have been fairly dire for a lot of agencies. They have really struggled with, budget cuts, etc., from their clients, and also just simply the cost of running an agency seems to have gotten prohibitively expensive in itself. So we recognize that. So last year, for example, at the PM Awards, we gave away a number of tickets to new talent. So those people that often get, maybe not represented enough at the awards, because quite often it'll be the agency owner, the senior SLTs, if you like, that will attend. And we said, well, okay, what about the next generation coming through, the new talent? And so we opened that up, excuse me, to 2 tables. So that's 20 people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to come. And those are completely free tickets. You just had to nominate somebody or nominate yourself and give a rationale as to why you should be attending. And so I think that's a wonderful initiative to address the point that, yes, for some people, whatever the cost is still too much. So give some for free to get the interest through there.
Okay. But I think we've actually managed to have the entire conversation without mentioning AI. And I just wondered, maybe we should be careful with this because we could open up a whole area of discussion. So I'm going to ask one specific question, I think. As running the awards, yeah, what, if any, guidance are you providing in terms of using AI in your activity or in your pitch. There's two different things going on there. So I
Yes.
think we need to be a bit careful with this, but just give me a sense of thinking in terms of, are you dictating or requiring people uh, to declare use of AI? Where is AI hitting this process? I think there's a bigger question here. So maybe I'll just leave you to say a few words and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's a really big can of worms. Let's be
Right.
honest,
Okay.
because I think, look, let's try and be a bit philosophical about, or a bit helicopter rather, about this. If the work that you've produced for a client, has passed through all the rigors that the clients will impose upon you, and I know this, as recent as the last couple of years, some clients, for example, will not allow any Gen AI to be used in the production of artwork or any creative. Some are absolutely embracing it, by the by. But if you've managed to pass the MLR, rigor, medical, legal, regulatory, plus you've gone through everything that says you need to declare you own the intellectual property of this work when you're submitting it, then good on you. You submit that and we will recognize it. I think and by the way, I've seen very little work come through that you could identify as being AI enhanced, shall we say. There are some things coming through this year's PMIs that I've seen in the shortlist that are using AI, not necessarily to produce work, but in order to build strategy, to build insight, shall we say, for a campaign or what have you, or using AI to help triage questions from a healthcare professional to the right answer, quotes, the right answer. So I think what you're going to see over the next couple of years is obviously AI being integral to a lot of entries, and we'll have to change our criteria to reflect that. But I think the biggest obstacle, again, careful what I'm saying here, the biggest pressure point, shall we say, is going to be the client allowing AI to be utilized in any work that is going to be at an awards competition or otherwise. Actually, anything that's used in pharmaceutical marketing or communications, how is that AI being used, and who owns the intellectual property of the resulting output?
I think I've opened up a bigger question there, which we should close down and maybe chat again another time about. And we are over time. So look, I'm going to say a huge thank you, Dom. I find these conversations fascinating, and the insights, just chatting away like this, the insights into the awards and the background to it, the rigor of the process, and the value of it, I just find it fascinating, and I'm hoping everybody else does as well. So I'm going to say thank you. I know I can speak for you and say anybody who's interested can follow up directly with you. LinkedIn is an easy way of doing it. I just think also we should just shout out the web address if we're interested in the PMI Awards or the PM Awards. Well, you just shout out the website that people can go to.
Yeah, pmsociety.org.uk. Go there, any information. And also, I just want to say, I misrepresented the interest groups. I said there are 7. There are, I think, but they will list them out there in detail because I've forgotten all of them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. And this is part of the point of these conversations, is to feed people back into these sorts of other resources and information, so on and so forth. So we should stop there. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Just give a little wave and we'll stop the recording. Thanks.
Thank you.